Get ready, Staten Island.
The Ferry Hawks host the Hagerstown Flying Boxcars. Tonight at 7 p.m., it's soccer night, and kids glow around the bases postgame. Saturday at 6:30, it's Broadway night with postgame fireworks and Broadway rave. Sunday at 1:30, it's Military Appreciation Day, and the kids run around the bases.
A great day out for the entire family. Kids run the bases after every Sunday home game. Want the best seats all season? Get more Ferry Hawks for only $63. Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to your weekend from the Powerhouse Blowtorch Signal. Talk Radio 77 WABC, and proudly broadcasting from the center of the universe, New York City, to the nation and the world. Welcome to another program, the Dr. Sky Experience, a show that talks about the mysteries from the great realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, American exceptionalism, and stories of celebrity guests. We like to call it a theater of the mind. We love that when you call in and provide us with commentary from our special guests in the form of critical thinking with dialogue. And that number, we, of course, promote 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-WABC to get in on the conversation. But I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our helmsmen, both Bill and Jackson, maintaining the quality of this signal as you would expect to get you on the air as we continue to talk with you about some of the great subjects. What about tonight's adventure? 2 special guests. Hour number 1 will be reintroducing a special guest that we've had on many times by popular demand. Space historian and author Rod Pyle, talking about what, ladies and gentlemen, is probably one of the most incredible stories in the world of finance as Elon Musk and SpaceX move toward this valuation of their company now at some $2.1 trillion, making it probably the 6th most powerful company in the world as far as its valuation. And so much more about what's happening in space. In hour number 2, we return back to a subject that's near and dear to so many of you, and I'm sure you'll welcome Shane Hurd of Arizona MUFON, his own example and his analysis of the movie that I haven't seen yet, Disclosure Day, Spielberg's epic movie about what may be behind the curtain, and hopefully some disclosure. As we continue here on the Dr. Sky Experience, we talk once again about these great mysteries, and it's our hope and intent that each and every listener out there worldwide begins to learn something new each week that they probably haven't heard during the time of the day when the sun pretty much rules our lives. Let's continue with our special guest, Rod Pyle, space historian and author. He's editor-in-chief of Ad Astra magazine, the National Space Society, author of many, many books. His website, books.com. So much to talk about. Let's get right to it. Thank you, Rod, for joining us on the Dr. Sky Experience. So much to talk about. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
I always love having you on, and so do the listeners. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have an email that you'd like to send to me, mine is just drsky@wabcradio.com. Rod, let me let you have the floor here. Talk to us about this amazing IPO, what's happened in the last, 24 hours or so. And I throw a question out to the audience. Did anybody out there secure some of SpaceX stock? And was it a simple procedure today, and your excitement? And if you haven't done that, what might be some of your plans with this amazing company that's going to move us off planet Earth one bit at a time? How excited are you about this whole IPO? Talk a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and it kind of pulls 2 ways for me. So on the one hand, I'm glad to see this large influx of $76 billion going to SpaceX, because they need it if they're going to come even close to meeting the demand by NASA for a lunar lander by 2028. On the other hand, it's tying up a lot of money in one company when there's other companies doing great things that could use some of it. So while one doesn't necessarily exclude the other, as you already mentioned, this is a place where they're parking a whole lot of capital at this point. It was expected to open at about $135 a share. It ended up opening at $155 and closing the market at $161. Mm-hmm. So, past $2 trillion. How does one even... This is like talking about how many stars in the universe, right?
Exactly. You hit it on the head. You're right. That is amazing, Rod, because you may think about this, ladies and gentlemen, if you go back, let's say, 100 years or more, the technology revolution that happened with locomotives, steam-powered railroad equipment and so many other technologies, the telephone, the telegraph. This, of course, goes to a higher strata. But I want to give the audience, and jump in on this if I don't get it correct. I think I have. I'm not a trillionaire, I'm not a billionaire, but the understanding of numbers from the astronomical side, let's talk about it this way. 1 billion seconds is 32 years. So you'd multiply that by 1,000, and let's say we were there, let's say we're a trillionaire, and we put 1 penny per second into a little pot. We'd need a pretty big pot. It would take 31,310 years, Rod, as they say, just to get to that level. And if you had $1 per second, in 12 days, you could amass $1 million. So these numbers, without being ridiculous, are more than astronomical. I mean, it's just incredible to think what a trillion is. But then on the dark side, many out there in the audience would say, well, wait a minute, Dr. Sky. What about our federal deficit, which goes into many, many trillions? Has it even approached, 40 trillion? I don't know, but we'll stick with space. So please continue. It's just an interesting story to report about a guy that probably didn't even think he was going to succeed at that, as he said in his press conference, in a whole different way. It's amazing.
Yeah, when he started this company in 2000, he gave himself a 10% chance of succeeding. His goal at that point was initially to land a greenhouse on Mars, and then he thought, no, I want to get people to Mars. And that goal has kind of waxed and waned over the years, but in the process of going that direction, he flew the Falcon 1 about 2008, 2009. Number of launch failures. The company was on imminent bankruptcy watch. And then a guy named Steve Jurvetson with an investment fund, a VC, came and bailed them out with a huge cash investment. So, of course, he's got a big payday coming. And then by 2015, 2016, SpaceX is rising to prominence yes. in the launch market. At this point, I think last year they launched almost 160 times. And United Launch Alliance, which is the main competitor, a long-standing legacy aerospace company that started launching rockets in one form or another back in the 1960s, I think launched twice or three times.
Yes.
So SpaceX has just taken the market over, and they've done amazing things.
You're right, and you have to be amazed, folks. I mean, right here in Arizona, we watch, I'm sure you do in the southern parts of the United States, and even up into the New England states, you can see these amazing, looking like jellyfish, big blobs in the sky as these rockets head out into space. But yet there's many people out there, for another time and another show that we will do, the whole pollution of low Earth orbit is another problematic thing. And not only, of course, is SpaceX putting up a plethora of satellites, so many in low Earth orbit, some coming down, many going up. Other countries are doing the same, so that's a whole nother topic. But just continuing with the momentum here, Rod, I wanted to have you tell us a little more about yourself. I mean, I did a very short bio of you. You've been a friend of mine for many, many years, and I do hear you and see you on other various platforms around the country. How'd you get started in this whole space interest?
Oh, boy. Well, we're of a similar age, so we both grew up during the space age, and if you were aware of what was going on, for me, it was the middle of the Gemini program. I started realizing that there are people going into space. I thought that was amazing, and just was welded to the television set for every Apollo mission there was. I remember the 2-year stand down after the Apollo fire, the long wait for Apollo 7, then the dash to Apollo 8 a couple months later. That was an astonishing time. And, of course, Apollo 11 and all the rest of the flights. And it was a little frustrating because if you remember back then, we only had 3 TV networks, which, of course, is where we were watching all the moonwalks. By the time we got to Apollo 14, the networks felt, there's nothing new here. So they actually cut away from American astronauts exploring the moon to go to reruns of Days of Our Lives in General Hospital. I mean, I just felt so violated as a kid because I was staying home from school to watch this stuff. But, with that grounding, how could you not love this stuff? Because this was really an age of adventure. Then came the shuttle era, slowed down a bit. We're stuck in Earth orbit, but built this magnificent space station. So all along, I was just trying to find my place in that business, and ended up going into the writing and authoring side because it was where I could really tell those stories, just like you, storyteller.
Yeah, there you go. And here we are today, speaking with people far and wide around the nation, around the world. And ladies and gentlemen, your questions and comments, that's why we call this the Theater of the Mind. You joining us in a different type of format where you can call in. No question is impossible, and like we say, our guests and myself, if we don't know, we're going to be very honest, because truth and honesty is always the way to go. But there's so much information out there. If you'd like to join in and share your experiences about what you've heard today, and also I hope it's on the positive side. If not, we welcome commentary. The number here, the contact number for the Dr. Sky Experience, 1-800-848-9222. Rod, there's so many other things to talk about here, but in closing off on SpaceX, unless the callers want to jump in on this, and please feel free to respond to them, of course. But let me move forward on this. It's an exciting time in my mind because it's like a national feeling here, an international feeling of getting us off this particular planet. Because if we take a look at how many people are on the Earth right now, and I'm not looking at this, but an hour ago I was, 8,298,600,000 souls are populating the Earth. But the in and out thing, there were 295,000 births within the last 24 hours, and sad to say, 140,000 deaths, so more births than deaths. But where are we going to go, Rod Pyle? I mean, people like Hawking say we need to get off the planet. Other smart people say it. There's always war, and hopefully we'll see the end of the Iranian situation. But the reality is, where do we go? And I think that's why I like what the vision that Elon Musk and even Jeff Bezos and others have.
Well, there's a lot of logic to it, and organizations like the people I work for, the National Space Society, will tell you about, the wisdom of forming, whether you're going to another planet or another body like the Moon or Mars, both of which are going to require a lot of engineering to make livable, obviously, or whether you're talking about free space settlements like Jerry O'Neill foresaw back in the 70s. I would say, having spent a month up in the Arctic at a Mars simulation camp up there that NASA finances on Devon Island, which is the largest uninhabited island in the world, there's a lot of room left on this planet. It's not all ideal. Some of it is water deprived. Some of it is very arid and sparse in terms of resources, but it's still better than anywhere else in the solar system. So we've got a lot of work to do, and we've got a lot of room to expand on in the world. I think the other thing, however, that Hawking and others spoke about is water scarcity, food scarcity. With climate change, whether you believe it's caused by human beings or not, you do see the shifting of where crops can grow, massive new insect infestations and saltwater incursions and so forth. So we got a lot of challenges to solve with technology right here. But I'm with you. I do believe we've got to push upward and outward. One thing interesting about this IPO, it created 4,400 new space millionaires out of SpaceX alone.
Wow.
And a number of those people are probably going to either be investing in other companies or doing new space startups, because that's why they got in it in the first place. So we may see a whole bunch of new companies, hopefully not around launch, because we've got launch pretty much covered with Blue Origin and SpaceX as it is. But with the other things we have to worry about, life support, being able to grow food in vats and radiation abatement and that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping to see a lot of new innovation coming out of this indirectly.
Yes, Rod, I think that's awesome. 1-800-848-9222. Get you into the Theater of the Mind with your questions and comments in this hour number one of the Dr. Sky Experience, speaking with Rod Pyle, space historian and author. And hey, how about this? Even for average people, and I certainly count myself as one, I'm not a millionaire or a billionaire, and I'm not proud not to tell the truth. But the truth is, look at what it can do. You just said it for some of the bigger people as far as investing in these companies that had a lot more money. There's an opportunity here to make a pretty good windfall if things go and the winds blow correct, right?
Yeah, although, it's interesting, the various parties out there that rate these things. Of course, there was a lot of rah-rah talk about this IPO. Sure. There was also some kind of downcast reports. The S&P 500 in particular said, we're going to wait a year on this because there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So this IPO included XAI, for instance, which has been losing money at a pretty bruising pace, especially compared to Anthropic and the others. It also includes Starlink, which was the cash cow for the company. And the good news is, because of this infusion of cash, Starlink can start putting its money elsewhere within SpaceX, and it doesn't have to keep financing things like Starship, which has also been a big money sink. So there's a lot of, it's pulling in a lot of different directions. Personally, I think it'll probably soar quite high, but we do have to bear in mind there could be some ups and downs and bumps along the way, which of course may be the opportunity for guys like you and me to invest if the stock goes down for a while.
Absolutely. It's risky. Everything's risky. And I want to mention, you and I are not being paid by any of the companies to go ahead and promote this. It's just in our opinion, and I think that's always good as we watch and love the subject of the space environment that we're talking about here. I want to move on because it's a limited amount of time with you, and I'm sure the callers will want to ask their questions, and that's why we're here. They rule. So the interesting thing is, talk about the success of Artemis 2. Let's shift over to NASA. Lots of kudos there. I mean, that was an amazing mission, but let me hear it in the words of Rod Pyle. What was the great success of that?
Well, a sensational mission. We have been building up to this for a long time. On the podcast I do, This Week in Space, we just had Jim Bridenstine on today, who was the NASA administrator in 2017, who started the Artemis program. And one of the remarkable things about that is there have been 3 attempts under different presidents to restart something that looked like the Apollo program. All had failed. Finally, under Trump's first term, here comes Jim Bridenstine. He says, okay, we're going back to the moon. It worked. It was underfunded, but at least it continued on. And it continued on through the Biden administration. One of the few times NASA plans bridged one administration to another, one party shift to another, and then back in the Trump administration. So finally, years late, but finally we get this mission. Now, it was not quite Apollo 8. Apollo 8 back in 1968 went to the moon. It was a Hail Mary because the lunar module wasn't ready to land. We didn't want the Russians to steal our thunder. So we went to orbit around the moon for just over a day and then brought those guys home. Very risky.
Exactly.
Had that one rocket engine not fired to leave lunar orbit, they'd still be there. So that was quite daring. This was a little less so. It was a flyby, but it was still a spectacular mission. Really, it was an engineering mission. It was to test the spacecraft, the life support system, communications, and, of course, the advanced computer systems that we didn't have in the 60s that we do now. What's kind of amazing to me is, despite the incredible advances in technology and metallurgy and composites and computing and all this, it's still really hard to go to the moon because the physics haven't changed any. You still need a really big rocket. And you got to aim for these real narrow corridors coming back to Earth. You got about a degree or two in latitude. And if you miss, they either go bouncing off into space or burn up in the air.
Very risky, Rod Pyle. You say it so well.
Yeah.
Rod Pyle is in our Theater of the Mind. And you, ladies and gentlemen, are welcome to call us. 1-800-848-9222. And Rod, the phone lines are lighting up, as I would expect here. Let's go to line number 1 and welcome Gregory in Michigan. You're on with our good friend, Rod Pyle, space historian and author. How you doing?
Dr. Sky and your distinguished guest, Mr. Positive, boom shakalaka. I got to ask you, my friend.
Yes, go ahead, sir. Yes.
UAPs have been becoming more real. And I've got to ask you, the zeitgeist, why all of a sudden are we now finding out about them? Is it political, or is it our scientific measurements that are able to find them now as opposed to 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or 10 years from now? Why now?
Well, Gregory, I think in the simple answer, we have better technology. Everybody has a video camera in their pocket and a data recorder and a voice recorder. We didn't have that a long time ago. But, Rod, your comment on this to Greg, this is interesting. I know the subject matter will come up again in hour 2, but your take on that. I thought he brought up something interesting.
Well, he did. And again, for me, this also pulls both ways. So we recently had the disclosure site go up under the Department of War, and we had the first 2 tranches of material. And a lot of it was familiar to us. We saw the Tic Tac and the Go Fast videos, which to some extent have been explained away, but there's still a sense of mysteries around those. What I found weird about the second group of materials was I felt like I was looking at that 1965 Life magazine about UFOs.
Yeah, I remember.
You may remember.
Absolutely.
A lot of the pictures are very similar, and I thought, okay, we got these blurry black and white photos. There's a couple from the Apollo program that are kind of compelling. But by and large, this is stuff I'd either seen before or very similar to things I had seen before. We've been carrying around 10 and 20 megapixel cameras in our pockets, about half the world's population, for 10 to 20 years. I want to see the good stuff. Bring me the good stuff.
Absolutely. Course, give us the truth. Right.
Yeah.
Open up that can of worms.
Trying to explain some of these, and there's a percentage that they cannot ascertain good answers for, and the majority of them they feel they have. So, to me, it's still a big mystery. I'm looking forward very much to seeing Disclosure Day. I want to see what Steven Spielberg has to say about it.
Absolutely.
But that's about the best answer I got. What about you?
And it's a good one. Gregory in Michigan, we can take one more comment because we're kind of close on, I'm short on time, excuse me. If you're still with us, go for it, my friend. Go ahead.
Dr. Sky, fantastic show. Everybody go for your dreams.
Amen. Thank you so much, Greg in Michigan.
Well said.
This is so amazing here, Rod, as we talk about this. Again, the space program, if we go back to October 4, 1957, I was just a baby. I was like not even 1 year old at the time. That's how old I am, or how new I am to the world. But the thing is, it's so amazing in that short amount of time. Look at the Wright brothers from 1903 to today. Who would have thought back when the Wright brothers flew, maybe 10 years later, I'm sure people still scoffed and said, those airplanes, that's just a temporary fad. Nothing will happen. But the space thing, and if we go back to even Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, like the Russian, who dreamed these dreams of seeing spacecraft, before the 19th century. And that to me is just totally amazing how far and how fast we've moved. What's next, right? This is what the exciting part is.
Mm-hmm. You said it.
It's amazing. Well, we're almost at the bottom of the hour, as we do in talk radio, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, and even in television. We always have the hard breaks. But before that, I want to mention one more time, 1-800-848-9222 is the number to get in touch with our special guest, as we call it, a Theater of the Mind. Rod, tell us how people can get in touch with you, because an hour is a short time to get all the information out.
Sure. Easiest way is to go to either rodpilebooks.com or pilebooks.com. They go to the same place. There's a contact me window there, and you can just go in there and pop in whatever you got to say, and I'll get back to you.
That's awesome. And talk about Ad Astra. To the stars. I remember a good friend of ours, a personal friend of mine, Mr. Hugh Downs, of course, so much involved in the organization. Tell us again what you do there for Ad Astra.
So I'm the editor-in-chief, which in an organization the size of the National Space Society means I do everything except write all the articles. So I've got a fairly large staff of freelancers. The rest of it's between me and an editor and a publications director. But, we are kind of one of the last magazines of that kind standing in the print market. So by virtue of that, we've become, I think, the best.
That is amazing. So much information, so short amount of time to discuss it. And when we come back, we have a couple of minutes before that hard break, but when we come back, we're going to get into a conversation on the opposite side of the equation. It's just not Elon Musk doing things, growing the space industry. It's also Jeff Bezos at Blue Origin. So in a couple of minutes, just set the stage. What happened to their New Glenn rocket and how sad that is? Tell us if people aren't even aware of what they did back, I believe it was June the 8th. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, a little earlier than that, I think. But
it was.
We were anticipating a launch of the New Glenn, which would have been, I think, a third.
Yes.
And they were doing a static test on the pad, which generally is a pretty safe thing. Something we think went wrong with one of the BE-4 engines down the first stage. They're large and very powerful, working under monstrously high pressures and temperatures. And there was an explosion that literally looked like a nuclear bomb going off. The New Glenn's a big rocket. There's a lot of energy in all that fuel, and there was a mushroom cloud that was visible for dozens of miles. So, it's one thing to lose the rocket, but they also lost a lot of their launch infrastructure. And unlike SpaceX, they just have that one launch pad.
Yes, that's
LC-36. So
no, you're right. It's like a nuclear explosion, just like the Russians when they had their N-1 rocket explode. As they said, I think Elon Musk said it, space is hard, right? And just to get to space, we'll be talking so much more with Rod Bile and the Next half hour of hour number 1 of the Dr. Sky Experience. Again, you have any questions for me, and we sometimes get some of those guests by your participation. Don't guarantee, or not guarantee that we get everyone that you recommend, but it has helped us to keep this family very close together. In the Dr. Sky Experience is something that we call the Theater of the Mind. My email, drsky, of course, at wabcradio.com, as we explore the many mysteries of the universe. And our goal, right, Rod Pyle, is that somebody out there, the many people that are listening, that we all learn something about this vast universe and the great mysteries that are out there. And believe me, folks, listening to Rod and others out there, so many mysteries continue. Much more on the Dr. Sky Experience when we return with your questions and comments, like line number 2, Nick in Virginia, and line 1, Al in Yonkers. We'll get to you just as soon as we can.
This is the Dr. Sky Experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hello, America! Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the incomparable Dr. Sky program, one of my idols. He is a man of science.
The Earth is made of 197 million square miles. And did you know that in a small teaspoon of soil, there are more microbes in that little teaspoon than there are people on the Earth? Now, on the planet Earth, and this is an accurate number, 8,298,588,386, and the number continues to increase by about 4 per second. As we continue with 31 minutes after the hour, our special guest, we call him a serious friend of the show, and I hope you're enjoying him, a repeat guest, Rod Pyle, space historian and author. Rod, welcome back. Let's continue with the callers right now. We go to line number 2, Nick in Virginia. You've been patient. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Dr. Sky and Rob. Well, I would like to get your opinion on some of the challenges of having a space station on the moon. And the biggest challenge I see is getting enough material up to the moon to build a space station. And I'm thinking that the best way to do that would maybe be to go like they did in the old B movies. Mm-hmm. You know, the whole space craft lands on the moon, maybe with a trailer behind it with, as a mothership. And then I understand that the best part or the most favorable part of the moon would be the southern portion where there is ice there. And also, I want you to address the challenges of 250-degree temperatures in the day and 400-degree temperatures at night. And
yes, you know your stuff, Nick. You bring up some very good points. Rod, go ahead, please.
Well, yeah, so we've been looking at how to build a moon base since the 1950s when Project Horizon came out, and the more we look, the harder it gets, in a sense. We do have to move a lot of mass up there. There's talk of repurposing. So we used to have this thing called Lunar Gateway, you probably know about. It was going to be a moon-orbiting space station, much smaller than the ISS, but kind of similar in design, this modular space outpost that would be occupied for a month or so at a time. That's since been canceled, but they're looking at maybe trying to repurpose some of those modules to deliver down the lunar surface and piece together. Now, there is this difficulty of launching all that mass up there. There's also, however, the difficulty of once you've got these structures on the lunar surface, you've got to cover them with a couple of meters of lunar soil to protect the people living there from radiation. So that's a whole nother level. Yes. There is some talk, not a lot, but there is some crosstalk about, Starship is a really big single monolithic structure. If you could get one of those on the surface, which they're planning to do anyway for the human landing system, and slowly lower it on its side or land it on its side, you have this single pressurized volume that's about the same size as the entire International Space Station in just one Starship. So if you could launch and land 4 or 5 of those, you've got this, major housing structure on the moon.
Yes. Rod, you bring up something interesting here, and Nick actually brings us to this focal point. This is interesting, Nick. When you look at the Starship lunar lander, I mean, coming down, if it's a regular Starship, the long, skinny, like if you hold a pen and hold it in your hand on a table, pointing it straight up, my concern would be, and I think, Nick, you'd jump in on this, how the heck does that thing stay stable if we've had recent, privatized companies send these little space probes to the moon, and they wind up tipping over? And you just mentioned it, Rod. It would what? It would land vertically, and then the goal would be to remove it horizontally, I guess. That's a big feat to do, don't you think? Well, that's hard.
And you want to do it under your control, not having it tip because it landed with one of 4 landing legs in a crater. And this has been a big concern about this particular system design since it was selected a few years back, which is why a lot of people are putting their money on what Blue Origin is doing, which is a much more traditional lander design.
Exactly. Nick, you get the last word if you're still with us. Thanks for your call. You brought up some interesting points.
I understand there are overhangs and caverns that have temperatures in like the 60s. If you can get a craft underneath one of these overhangs or into one of these caverns, you wouldn't have to cover it with moon soil. You'd just be right in there. And I would like, maybe you can have it where you can crawl in and out. You got those 14-day days and 14-day nights.
Right.
And come out.
Yeah, you're right.
And would that be possible or a good idea?
Well, this is discussed quite a bit. I just came from a conference where we had a lot of discussion about lunar base sighting and items like this. And honestly, some of these caverns are quite large. There was one of them that was famously rated as being the size of Pittsburgh inside. They think they have to get down there to see. One way or the other, there's caverns and there's lava tubes. Lava tubes are a little iffy because there's a increasing body of evidence that the ceilings of them might be a little brittle, but there certainly are places into which you could go, and at that point you could have a robust inflatable structure, and you wouldn't need to necessarily move hard monolithic structures down there. You could have basically a huge pressurized moon tent, and as you say, you've got all this protection now with this rock overhang or this rock ceiling inside this cave from not just radiation, but from micrometeorite impacts as well. And so you don't necessarily need a metal rigid structure anymore.
Well, Nick in Virginia, thank you for your insightful questions. That brings us right here to the Theater of the Mind. Appreciate you, and hope you'll stay tuned to hour number 2 as we talk about Steven Spielberg's movie Disclosure with somebody from MUFON here in Arizona that's actually seen it. And we're going to do a deep dive into that and all the other things going on in the UAP world and so much more. Let's continue with the callers. I appreciate you, Rod, for being with us. Let's go to line number 1. We have Al in Yonkers. Al, you've been patient. Good morning to you. How you doing?
Thanks a lot, Dr. Sky and your guest. I just wanted to make a quick comment, if it's okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, when I was a young kid, I went to parochial school in 1982. I took an autograph collecting class when in that year, and I was nice enough to get a response from Neil Armstrong. He was an Ohioan, which you know. Yes. And it's to this day my most treasured autograph that I received back.
That's
but what
amazing.
I really want to touch on, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
No, I'm saying that's amazing. I'd hold on to that and put it in an airtight cylinder. That's amazing.
No, I definitely do. It's something that, I have many, but that's my most prized, probably my most, the one that's most worth of, it's the best one to have.
Amen.
But I wanted to say, the 1960s was such a turbulent, terrible decade. We had the assassinations of the Kennedys. We had the struggle for civil rights, Vietnam. It was such, a triumph in July of 1969 to get Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins, the Gang of Three, to be able to get Neil Armstrong on the moon. We had a new president with Richard Nixon, and it was a great way to end the decade, which was a really terrible decade.
You're right. And look where we've come. Rod, your comment, this is going back. He's bringing up some history. Some of it's not exciting, but through all these, tribulations and travail, we've succeeded. But your response, Rod, on that?
Well, I guess what that brings to mind is, can this new lunar effort do the same thing for the times we find ourselves in now, which are not entirely dissimilar from the 60s? The main difference being that the United States depending on your point of view and how you parse out the numbers, is not as ascendant as it was in the 60s. I mean, we really dominated the world at that point in both technology and financial structure and so forth. And now we've got this huge competitor in China that could soon leave us behind, at least economically, and certainly with their space efforts. So we find ourselves in this foot race again. The 1960s, Apollo famously to beat the Russians to the moon. Mm-hmm. Apollo was largely a geopolitically motivated program with science as a nice byproduct along with innovation and so forth. So we're doing it again with a lot less money to spend. The budget of NASA is about a tenth of what it was back then. So I guess my question for both of you would be, do we think that this is going to bring a collective sigh of relief and a sense of accomplishment and goodwill like it did in the 60s, or are we just going to continue on this foot race with the Chinese?
Very interesting. Al, if you're still with us, your response, comment if you'd like to make one on this SpaceX IPO. I mean, a lot of people are excited about it. What say you, if you don't mind? I like to ask people out there in general what they think about things like that.
I really think it's, a great thing for the future. And I just wanted to say, when we think about what took place in the 60s, we had so much competition with the Russians, during the time. It was the height of the Cold War. And it was so good. I mean, I know they had put a monkey in the moon, in space, and it was so good that we were able to defeat them in the space, the race in the space program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. Al, thanks for being part of the show.
I have to say...
go ahead, Rod. I'm sorry.
It's fascinating to me that the U.S., we've stumbled along for decades trying to restart the moon program. It's not like we weren't doing anything. We were running the space station, which was a magnificent achievement, tons of innovation, especially in the biosciences coming from there. But we were slow to leave Earth orbit again, and that sped up when we perceived we had international competition, just like in the 60s. We were sort of lagging behind. The Russians are pulling ahead of it. We go, hey, we exited World War II as the most powerful nation in the world. How is it that these Russian guys are pulling ahead of us so quickly? So once again, we're faced with competition. And it seems to me that's when we do our absolute best.
Yes. Like Elon Musk says, space is hard. And obviously, even when President Kennedy was alive, the whole goal there of landing a man on the moon and returning him, safely to the Earth, that was bold talk in a time period when many people might say, wow, that's really off the charts. How can you do it? So again, this enthusiasm that we're hearing, Al. Appreciate you, Al. Thanks for being part of the Dr. Sky experience. Hope you'll join us in the future, too. It's interesting, Rod. So many questions to ask you before we go to the next break here in just a moment. But this is something fine. Can you tease this? I'd like to talk to you about Artemis 3. That was originally supposed to be the landing on the surface of the moon by U.S. astronauts and maybe other nations that would join us. What's going on with Artemis 3? You got about 2 minutes, and then we can carry it on the other side of the break.
Yeah, we've had a string of NASA announcements in the last few months with Jared Isaacman now at the helm and really getting into the seat there. So Artemis 3, as you point out, was supposed to be the first lunar landing, but Isaacman wisely, I think, said, we got to up the pace of these launches if we're going to keep the production capacity open, if we're going to keep the people trained and sharp that are in mission control and other parts of NASA and private industry to make this work, we got to step it up. So Artemis 3 is now, hopefully in about a year, going to be an Earth orbital mission. They just announced the 4 astronauts that are going to be flying this. The whole point is to continue testing out the Orion spacecraft, but critically to rendezvous and dock with and maneuver with one or both of these planned lunar landing systems, whether it be SpaceX or Blue Origin's. So it's supposed to be a flight test of 3 big pieces of hardware. We'll see which one of those lunar lander makes it into orbit in time.
Right, and they have to build it. Now that we had the Bezos problem, of course, with the New Glenn, that does have a setback. It's obvious to many people out there. But again, I think technology and the ability to do this and work very hard, as these scientists do and these engineers, I think it'll be a great success. It's reminiscent of what Apollo 9 did before the journeys to the moon with Apollo 10 and the landing.
Very much so. And I have hope that perhaps Bezos and Musk can have a conversation. There's no reason other than the integration adapter that they need. There's no reason I can think of that they could not launch the Blue Moon on top of the Falcon Heavy.
There you go.
If the New Glenn.
More with Rod Pyle. Sorry to cut everybody short here. The clock rules, as you know, in time and space. And on line 3, we have Edgar in the Bronx. We'll get to you and anybody else that wants to join the Theater of the Mind. The Dr. Sky Experience is here for you, ladies and gentlemen, at 1-800-848-9222. We'll be right back.
Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hi, this is Barry Farber. You're listening to Steve Cates. He is a man of many words, but much wisdom in those words. Always refuse to be a victim. Fight back legally and responsibly.
Nothing happens until something moves. A quote from the great Albert Einstein. 48 minutes after the hour, we continue with our friend and special guest of the Dr. Sky Experience, our space expert, Rod Biles, space historian and author, as we continue to welcome many people into the Theater of the Mind. Let's go to line number 3 and welcome Edgar in the Bronx. You've been patient. Good morning. How are you doing this morning?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to run this notion by you. We hear different things, different tidbits of knowledge concerning whatever the topic might be in science. Okay, The topic that I wanted is the moon. To what degree is there possibility that the moon was not naturally formed, was not a product of nature, but the moon is actually a product of intelligent beings, and so that thing called the moon could actually be a spacecraft. And the reason that came up as a possibility, is that explosion. Depending on you can send sound waves into the structure of the Earth or any other planetary body or any object to see to what degree what is the constitution of the interior of the whatever is being tested for that. So to what degree there might be possibility that it is true that the moon is not naturally formed, but actually a spacecraft, and
it's an interesting
that may harbor.
It's an interesting concept, Edgar, that you bring here. But Rod, you're on this subject all the time. Also, let me hear what you have to say because I want to chime in too with what Edgar's asking about. Please go first.
Well, just for the theoretical side, it seems like if you're going to build, unless you've got some nefarious plan in mind, if you're going to build a satellite for the Earth artificially, it's a lot of trouble to go through to cover it, rocks and basaltic plains and that kind of stuff. I mean, that's megatons of rock that you have to create unless you're building out of rock in the first place. In terms of it being potentially hollow or something, I believe 5 of the Apollo missions had successful seismographs deployed that operated for many months because the experimental packages were equipped, I guess it was in 4 cases because Apollo 13 didn't land, were equipped with nuclear power supplies, plutonium plugs that generated power for years afterwards until they were shut off. And they did deploy thumpers, small explosive charges. Now, those aren't going to necessarily ring very far through the basaltic rock below, but they didn't, as far as I know, nothing ever has been turned up that would indicate it's entirely hollow. There are spaces, lava pits and so forth, however.
Yeah, let me mention something, too, to Edgar on the same subject, because in our next hour, we're going to shift over. But if we don't get to you, please continue to hang on if you so desire, folks. But this is interesting, Rod. You probably heard this. In the UAP stories, we're hearing these revelations that Apollo astronauts in the disclosures actually detected what they thought might have been some kind of lunar base on the moon. This goes to Apollo 16, John Young, Charles Duke, and Ken Mattingly. And the story goes that as they were orbiting the moon, I think this was more Ken Mattingly when the other 2 gentlemen were on the surface, there's this weavy kind of porpoise-like motion that the command module went through. And some were saying, well, that could mean that the moon's hollow and it has, some kind of maybe pre-existing civilization there. But what we found out, not to discount that, Edgar, is that there's a thing in the world of gravity on the moon called mascons. And there are different density regions on the surface of the moon, not to say that the moon may not have, more dense or less dense areas. So that's an interesting thing that who knows what below the surface of the moon, but the Apollo astronauts, to put it in perspective scientifically, determined that those were, scientists said that these are things called mascons. In simple English, their gravity changes due to different mass in the surface of the moon. Edgar in the Bronx, thank you. You brought up some very interesting points. Let's go to line number 1 and try to get everybody on the air. Tom on Long Island, you're on with Rod Pyle.
For taking my call. Also with Pyle, appreciate your wisdom and input. My question is, with everyone saying these things about maybe putting structures in a lab on the moon and colonize, I would imagine it's a future colony. Life on the Earth here, we were all primitive time raised on hunting. You ate what you hunted, whether it was fish, poultry, fowl, beef, lamb, whatever. Is everyone that's going to be going to the moon going to be a vegetarian, number one? And number two,
that's a good point.
How are you planning on sending people up there without knowing how reproduction would be? Because it's to plan a colony for a future. How we don't know what the effects are of someone conceiving and giving birth in space.
Well, Tom, you bring up probably
developing to.
Tom, not to cut you short. Yeah, you bring up probably one of the most common sense questions of the whole hour. But Rod, I want to try to get another guest on here. Excuse me, another caller. But go ahead really quickly if you can to Tom. He brings up some good points. Common sense. Those are things that have to be worked out.
And he's absolutely right. We've done almost no studies of reproduction in space of mammals, just a few things with rodents, but not a gestation cycle. And we have to know, first of all, can a fetus gestate and grow properly in 1/6 gravity, which is the moon, in 40% Earth gravity, which is Mars, and possibly even in 0G if we have people, out in free space. But critically on these planetary and lunar surfaces, can mammals reproduce in a healthy way? And we just have no idea. So that is a huge, yawning area of research that's needed.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of hope with these private space stations. They'll be able to start doing that.
Yeah, and Tom, you would get the Common Sense Award virtually for the question. It's really fantastic. Thank you for calling.
Thank you very much.
Sorry to be short on time here. Let's go to line number 2. We have Buzz in the great state of Hawaii, all the way out there in the Pacific. Good morning, or good evening, I should say, to you. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, sir, Dr. Sky. Thank you for taking my call. And Rod, thank you. And look, the comment I have is I have the 1969 moon landing on reel-to-reel magnetic tape.
Ooh.
And I'd like to get that converted to digital, but I can't find anyone out here that does that.
I can imagine. That would be a challenge just about anywhere. So what is it? It's in the original, television format when they had the, big U-matic format? I'm trying to think. Way back when, right?
What I did, our black and white Philco TV steel cabinet, I taped the microphone up to the TV speaker and had the recorder going, and that's what it is. And you might hear our little dog bark once in a while.
Hey, I love it.
I did
it's
the
all
exact
about
same thing.
Yeah,
that's great.
I love that. Well, Buzz, I appreciate you sharing that all the way from. What time is it over there? It's what? We're about 6 hours different, I guess, from the New York market.
Yeah, it's 6:56. I'm out walking, and the sun's going to set here in about 2.5 minutes. It's just a beautiful Hawaiian day. And, Doc, thanks for taking this call. You always have a fantastic show. I love it all. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you to you and all the people listening out there. And obviously, as we go all the way out to the great state of Hawaii, just think where we're really going, Rod. All around the world, they say, and I know it's positive, like 173 plus countries, all 50 states, as we've heard from Hawaii. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever get a chance to go there and visit, right, Rod, get onto the top of the big mountain observatories. That is a very big treat. You get a minute or two to wrap it up, and I thank you, Rod. Sorry we couldn't get to 90% of what we had here, but it's all good information, and as long as the audience seems happy, like our friend Buzz telling us he enjoys the show, you got about a minute and a half. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, for Buzz, I would suggest getting on eBay, buying an old reel-to-reel tape recorder. They're anywhere from $30 on up. And then a analog to digital converter on Amazon, which is also $50 or less. And if you can't find somebody who will do that conversion for you, that's a heck of a way to go. And that might even encourage me to drag out all my reel-to-reel tapes that I've stored away somewhere so that I can hear my cat meow in the background as well. It's just, it's such an exciting time. We've got this movie Disclosure Day coming up, which I haven't seen yet. I'm hoping to see it tomorrow. I don't expect any great revelations with it, but I think it's a fun sci-fi narrative of what could happen. And increasingly, as you well know, people are looking at these phenomena. There's been more work about how to break. We had a couple of guests on our podcast about this, about how you break the news of first contact to the broader population, whether it's intelligent beings or just microbial critters. This raises huge questions, not just scientifically, but about theology, philosophy, religion. All these things are going to be challenged when and if we finally find another life form. And I think that's going to be probably the most exciting thing that will happen in my lifetime, is when that barrier is finally crossed.
Wholeheartedly agree, Rod. Rod Pyle, thank you so much. Space historian and author. Check him out at Rod Pyle Books. That's Rod, Pyle, books.com. You're always welcome here in our Theater of the Mind, and thanks for enlivening the conversation, and thank you to all of you in hour number 1. Hour number 2, just around the horizon, Shane Hurd. He's part of the MUFON organization here in Arizona, a good friend of ours. He's seen the movie, and maybe you have too. Your commentary on that. Plus, as we dig deeper into the whole UAP and disclosure story from the government and some of the revelations that David Grush has given us. If you haven't seen it, you'll hear it here on the Dr. Sky Experience as we continue to broadcast here from America's largest city, New York, to the nation, the world, and I'm sure out into the cosmos. We will be right back.
Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Moving deeper into your weekend, we thank you once again for joining me, Steve Cates, Dr. Sky, and the Dr. Sky Experience. From the powerhouse blowtorch signal of Talk Radio 77 WABC. Proudly broadcasting from the center of the universe, New York City, the nation, and the world. Welcome to hour number 2, as we talk with you about the great subjects of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and stories of American exceptionalism. A show that we like to call a theater of the mind. Why? Because we get with you, listening to you and your questions from the great guests that we have. In the form of critical thinking and dialogue, we love dialogue. The contact number is always 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-WABC. And while you're at it, why not download the WABC app so you can get further and further and deeper into our own theater. And there's many, many rooms in this particular app that I'm sure you'll enjoy if you haven't seen that by now. Also, a special thanks to our helmsmen, that is, both Bill and Jackson, maintaining the quality of the signal that you would expect with your telephone calls and the ability to hear this station, no matter where you are. Hour number 2 continues, and now we shift gears just slightly. Great information as we talk with special experts in their field in this particular story that's really everywhere, blasted on media all over the world, the recent revelation and the opening for the general public of Steven Spielberg's new movie, Disclosure Day. Have you seen it? And if you have, give us a call at 1-800-848-9222. Share with us some of the experiences, whether you liked it, whether you didn't, because many people are going to hear some interesting information from our special guest, Shane Hurd. Shane Hurd has spent nearly 25 years in government in the fields of civil engineering, geographic information systems, information technologies, and he's a graduate of Arizona State University's Certified Public Manager program. As a member of the space race generation, he has been a lifelong space and science nerd, as he calls himself, and a sci-fi geek. It was the Phoenix Lights incident in his hometown here in Phoenix, Arizona, that sparked his interest in UFOs. Since that time, he studied the subject intensely, and ultimately, in 2015, he joined MUFON, then became a MUFON field investigator in 2017. Who better than to ask Shane Hurd about the subject matter and commentary of a movie he's seen to give us his analysis, Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day. Shane, thanks for joining us this morning. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Let's get right to it. You went to see the movie, and I got to ask you, was that theater pretty packed when you saw it? Or the good question is, I guess you saw it late at night. Who knows, daytime? What kind of experience did you have, and share that with the audience on this movie?
Yeah, I actually went to a matinee Thursday morning, and there were probably about 150 people in the auditorium, and I just kind of, out of curiosity, noticed it was about a 50-50 split between men and women, and the demographics were kind of, there were some teenagers, and then some middle-aged folks, and then some older folks like me. So it was kind of a, pretty fair smattering, I think, of, the demographics around Phoenix, Arizona.
Absolutely. Cutting to the chase, what did you think of the movie overall? Because there's many people out there that have mixed opinions from what I've heard.
Yes, I agree. I have mixed opinions. First of all, I will say, from just purely a movie perspective, it was classic Steven Spielberg. It was great. I mean, the writing was good. The filmography was great. The music, the plot, everything made sense. And it was just beautiful to look at. And the acting was just incredible. That Emily Blunt, my goodness, she really sold the role. So from that perspective, I thought it was a good movie. And, very enjoyable. I think maybe some people who aren't familiar with the topic might struggle in parts of it because they made a lot of references to, the themes in ufology. And if you're not familiar with them, they might not have got it. But in general, I thought it was a great movie. And, the content was good, too. And I definitely have thoughts on the content because of, my experience with the UFO and UAP world. So, but I thought it was very fascinating, some really good stuff to talk about.
Well, good points. And I enjoy watching Emily Blunt there, as many people do. And if you're not familiar with this actress, she had starring roles in Sicario. This is a number of years ago. And a movie that I found totally fascinating, both A Quiet Place 1 and 2. And not to spoil those movies for people who haven't seen them, but isn't that most amazing? A Quiet Place. Who would have thought of having an alien invasion where you have to be quiet? That was obviously the name, A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
And that movie is, whoever wrote that up, and I know her husband is also in that movie too, John Krasinski. He played an interesting role. That movie just bothered me because you never think about that. Our world is full of sounds, but in this one, well, the alien invaders, even if you whisper, they'll find you, and that's pretty spooky.
Yeah, that was a frightening take on the alien invasion for sure.
That is. Shane Hurd's our special guest. If you've seen the movie, give us a call. If you haven't, questions, of course, about as we dig deeper into the whole UFO disclosure, not only from the government, but so many things. The congressional testimony of people like David Grush, Luis Elizondo, so many things to talk about here in so limited time. 1-800-848-9222. Get you into our theater of the mind. But I didn't know this. I had to read deep into this, and this is fascinating. Steven Spielberg, who's a product of Arizona, many people do not know that, he obviously had his interest in space and alien life. I didn't know this. By witnessing a meteor shower, did you know that, Shane? With his dad when he was 6 years old. I mean, there's his connection. And who hasn't seen? Well, hopefully some of the listeners out there. And if you haven't, not to shift gears on you, but in August, we get the best of the meteor showers, at least for visibility. If you have a dark place, no moon will be in the sky for the Perseids in August. But I found that fascinating that his interest was piqued by seeing that. So a father-son event or with his family, that's a pretty cool thing. And look what he's done in the world of cinematography. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just shows what the spark of wonder in a child can lead to.
Absolutely. You know, I got to have your take on this, and I'd like people to know from your side of the equation, what is a MUFON field investigator? The words simply sound like I know what that's all about, but describe the process, because now we're seeing so many different individuals and groups, even the government, wanting to welcome sightings of UAPs, the new term, right? Unidentified aerial phenomenon, the old UFO thing. So what does it take to be one of these MUFON field investigators, and to give us a little insight into what you do? I mean, I think I get it, but not everybody may get the details.
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's something that interests you, you can join MUFON, become a member, and then in time, when you feel like you're comfortable, you can apply to be an investigator. And they have a very extensive training program, a couple of 100-page book, a manual that deals with just absolutely every aspect of it. And then they have a thing called MUFON University where you take classes, including astronomy classes. Nice. And to round out your knowledge, of physics and the world around us, and then you go through a background check, of course. And once you've completed the training, you take an open book exam, and then you are good to go. You are assigned to a local chapter in the area in which you live, and then they will hook you up with a seasoned investigator on, let's say your first 5 cases, and you get mentored that way, and then they turn you loose on your own cases. And all the cases are reviewed in their finality by a chief investigator to make sure that everything went well and smoothly, and that the investigator is on track. And so an investigation obviously starts with the report. People can report at MUFON.com. And when they do, they can submit any photos or videos that they have or any additional evidence, and make that report. And when the report it's made at our world headquarters, and they triage it and they assign it to the appropriate chapter of MUFON. In our case, we have Arizona MUFON, and we have a chapter in Phoenix, and also Tucson, and one in Sedona. And so you're linked up with an investigator, and you start working your cases. But a person that does make the submission, we call a reporting person. And, we have an initial interview with them. We do over the phone. If warranted, we can also do it in person, especially if there's physical evidence involved. And then we kind of go through a process of elimination. And an investigation really is just based on the fact that, we weren't there. We didn't see it. We can't say absolutely it was this or that. So it's sort of a, process of elimination. So, hey, could what been seen be an airplane? And we have, tools and computer systems that we can track every flight, its date, time, and location. And we could say, hey, this hospital helicopter was, at that date, time, and location, and that's most likely what you saw. Or, we use Stellarium, which is a astronomy application, and again, you can visualize exactly what was in the sky at their date, time, and location. You could eliminate, an astronomical feature. We check.
Oh, it's important, right?
Oh, yeah.
You bring up some interesting points. Shane Hurd's our special guest, folks, as we continue at hour number 2 in the Dr. Sky Experience. Your questions and comments. We threw out a question at the top of hour number 2. Did you see the movie? And if not, your questions about what we're about to talk about here. So many things in the UFO world, from the government disclosures, so many, well, I shouldn't say answers, right, Shane? Some of these things are just mind-boggling that you're about to hear. If you haven't, we'll give you a summation. Your calls into the Theater of the Mind, 1-800-848-9222. Yeah, it's so important. The one that really is still bothering me, and I say it in a different way, as far as investigating it, is March 13th, 1997. And for those that may not know this, the Phoenix Lights event still holds really no answers at this point. And let me also go to our good friends here, the primary market of Talk Radio 77 WABC on a localized basis. Of course, we're everywhere. But there were so many sightings, Shane, in around the month of October of 2024 of these UAP-type objects, drones and something, and we've never got answers to that. They were all kind of speculation. So start off with the Phoenix Lights for people that didn't know this, because I'm amazed at this story even today.
Yeah, it is fascinating. It again, as you mentioned, that March 13th, 1997, a series of large, described as triangular or delta or boomerang-shaped craft basically paraded themselves low and slow from around Reports began around 6 p.m. in Henderson, Nevada, which is just outside of Las Vegas, and proceeded to cross the entire state of Arizona to the southwest, right over the city of Phoenix. And at that time, the population, I think, was about 2.5 million people. And I remember it was a nice, clear night. In fact, a lot of people were out looking at the Hale-Bopp comet that approached it at that time. And then there were lots of like Little League and soccer games. And, you know, people, this is common in Arizona in the evenings, especially in the winter and spring and fall when it's cooler. So all of these activities are just thousands and thousands of people out. And this demonstration is what it, you know, appeared to me to be of these craft. And they flew over the entire city. Thousands of people witnessed it, tens of thousands of people. Hundreds and hundreds of reports were made to, you know, local police, 911, to, you know, local newspapers. And in fact, you could even track the flight path of these things based on the phone calls people were making. So, you know, in Henderson, Nevada, somebody called at 6:10, and then, you know, at 7 o'clock, somebody in northern Arizona, and just, you know, so on all the way down till well after, you know, midnight and off into Mexico, I think. So it was really the world's largest mass sighting in recorded history, and many people took it very serious. However, very interesting to me, it was like a political science study to see the behavior of the media, the behavior of our local government.
Amazing.
And everyone acted just really strangely. In my mind, it was quite an interesting thing. So, and then, you know, that has become a part of Arizona state history. In fact, there's an exhibit in Arizona Historical Society Museum on the Phoenix Lights, and you know, Arizona is such a melting pot of people. So many people, like 100,000 a year, move here. So over 30 years, many people don't even know about it or recognize it and understand that it's a very part of Arizona history.
No, it is, Shane, and we could go on for hours on it because it still bothers me in the sense. No, I know, and you and I didn't see it personally on my phone without going into too much detail. I was watching Seinfeld, believe it or not. I'm honest with the audience. And everybody's calling me, and they're going, "Did you see it?" And I didn't know what the heck they were talking about. But a good friend of mine, a 727 pilot, who was a 747 pilot later, I trust his judgment. He was in Scottsdale, Arizona, just a little bit north of Phoenix. And he said to me, the thing was about a mile in length. And I said, "Repeat that?" And he said it moved over with no propulsion sound, nothing. It was just like it was drifting like a balloon. But even the Goodyear blimp has the little motors going. This thing actually changed. Get a load of this, ladies and gentlemen. You looked at the bottom of this triangular thing sailing over you, and it mimicked the sky patterns as if it had a holographic, you know, bottom to it, and it could change that, like a big sign nowadays, but not bright. But help us out on this, because many of the people in the New York metro area want to hear what MUFON might have as an answer, if an answer at all, to the drone UAP sightings that were going on here in the East Coast and the Northeast in 2024. That's even more bizarre, don't you think?
Oh yeah, that is crazy, and it does kind of smack of the same thing. It's like these drones or UAP. My gut tells me that based on the government's reaction, people deny, you know, the government denying any knowledge of it at first, and then later coming back and saying, "Oh, it was drones," and some small company poked their head up later and said, "Well, we test drones at night sometimes," and even though that's, you know, illegal, you know, there are just a lot of very fuzzy, not so clear explanations coming from various people and various explanations. And when I see that, I automatically know that there's something wrong here, that people are not being truthful or honest, or they're making suppositions that they shouldn't. And, you know, the facts are hard to come by. But my feeling with that is something extraordinary happened, because these drones were reported from coming out in excess of 50 miles off the coast, and then, again, low and slow in neighborhoods, and just, the explanations like, we were testing stuff, or it's top secret, military equipment. And, you don't test that over highly populated areas at night with no notification.
And that's what was going on, right? And we want to hear, Shane, from the audience out there. I mean, the people that, of course, may have seen those back then. What was your description of these things? Because we've never heard them, and they can chime in here at 1-800-848-9222. So how would we say it? Extraordinary sightings, require extraordinary evidence. And that goes with not just the UFO conundrum and the UAP, but what I want to do with you, because we have limited time here, and I want to go to your expertise, these whole things that are happening now with the government, its release of information, some of it is just literally mind-boggling. Some seems to be repetition with no answers. Just in other words, look at that thing move. Wow, we got another video of some, thermal camera showing a blip going by. But this is the thing that really concerns me right now. And I'm going to quote David Grush here, not exactly word for word, but some of the concept. If anybody has seen what he was talking about with some of the members of the congressional delegation outside the Congress, basically Grush's synthesis of everything he's talked about in the press conference is this. 1, a secret UFO program exists, as if we didn't know that. Illegal withholding from Congress. Wow, that's a powerful revelation. It's pretty much, we know that. Is it illegal? Yeah, I guess it is. And retrieved crash that are non-human. This is David Grush's testimony, not only from 2023, but recently. We are reverse engineering what's happening. And retaliation is real, so that other members of government agencies are in retaliation to those that are doing the, quote, whistleblowing. And that's another strange subject. And others in the government obviously know of the cover-up. And this is where it gets really strange. You hear about the UAP subject. You hear about ATIP, the program, Advanced Aerospace Threat ID Program, which ended in 2012, and some of the things that are coming out of there that what? Let me not steal words from you. They're grays, they're blondes, there's grays, and there's quads that have heads like insects. I mean, this stuff, you almost have to laugh at it in the beginning, but this is serious stuff that people are talking about. But where's the evidence, right, Shane? That's what we want to get to. What the heck's behind the curtain?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm in agreement with that summation that, these are incredible things, incredible claims. But we have seen lots of evidence that does suggest absolutely that we are interacting with a non-human intelligence. And the Navy has reported that, the DOD has confirmed that, and it's hard to accept without more evidence in the form that most people would accept as proof. And so I think, we're going to need to see a recovered craft, and we're going to need to see these biologics, as they're calling them. But let's be serious. What they're saying is they're aliens, right? There's occupants, there's pilots, whatever crash they've retrieved. And so if we see that, then, game over, then that's it. And this whole topic is just smothered in ambiguity, but that's by design, both on the part of the U.S. government, and it appears to me on the part of whomever this intelligence is, because they clearly have the ability to reveal themselves in spite of what our government wants to hide or whatever. So that's going to be the real issue. And even this movie touches on, is disclosure advisable based on, what the response by humanity could be versus, is this something we all have a right to know? And I think that's the underlying theme for it all. And if the government is reluctant to tell us, they may have some good reason, but they can hold back on the detail, right? You could say, hey, look, we are not alone, and here's proof and why. Now that would satisfy many, but of course many others would want more detail and greater detail. But you could parse that out at a pace that would not create a high level of panic, right? So
that's amazing.
I mean, there's a way to do it, but I don't envy these people. This is a really tough topic, And because especially if you have a scientific mind, and it just many people are like, hey, I got to see it to believe it. And
that's right. We want disclosure.
Yeah.
Shane Hurd is our special guest as we go to the hard break here at hour number 2. Still some 30 minutes and change to continue, ladies and gentlemen. Your questions and comments on this interesting subject as we bring in the next half hour so many other of the things that are being reported by people all over the world. It's just not here in the United States or in the Northern Hemisphere. What about other nations and their alleged reverse engineering of craft? These are all things, but we need evidence on this particular subject. No doubt the understatement of the entire world. We want disclosure. Steven Spielberg's movie, I haven't seen it. I'm hoping to do that over the weekend. Disclosure Day, interesting movie, according to Shane Hurd. And you can be part of our conversation here in the Theater of the Mind at 1-800-848-9222. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
This is Rizwan Vert, author of The Simulation Hypothesis. An MIT computer scientist shows why AI, quantum physics, and Eastern mystics agree we are in a video game. And you're listening to The Dr. Sky Show.
Two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe, or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. A quote from one of the great science fiction writers of all time, who gave us geosynchronous satellites, Arthur C. Clarke, the one who penned 2001, A Space Odyssey. 32 minutes after the hour, our special guest, UFO researcher from MUFON, Shane Hurd, is with us. He's seen the Spielberg movie, and he's been giving us some commentary on what he thought about this particular movie. Many people say it does give us some good insight into hopefully giving us some answers in the future, but not from Hollywood per se, but from our own government. Welcome back, Shane. I appreciate you and wanted to get into this. And again, ladies and gentlemen, 1-800-848-9222 brings you into our conversation. This is very interesting. Also, some of the things that we're hearing about from David Grush's press conference, in case people didn't see it, non-human biologics exist that we obviously have, under some lock and key. Non-human intelligent beings, another separate category of these type of, quote, ETs, extraterrestrials. Microscopic organisms, not of this earth. Now that's powerful. How do they know that? Well, they've been doing some research on this. And then the strangest one of all, I don't know if you've heard this, Shane, in the audience, sentient plasmoids, as David Grush talked about, intelligent life not made of DNA. I mean, this almost sounds like it's a movie unto itself from the realm of science fiction. Your comment on some of that. I mean, that's to be like so bizarre. This is really strange.
Yeah, I agree that he really was letting it fly in that
yeah.
conference, and I think that most people readily accept. He called it a spectrum of life, and it started out with bipedals, humanoids, and then he ended up on the other end of the spectrum, the plasmoids, and I kind of. My observation, many MUFON cases nowadays are about these lights in the sky and orbs, and their movement and motion is very strange, and it almost does look like biological, almost like sea life moving, but yet in the sky, and so I could see that explanation or that label, intelligent plasmoid being applied there. Of course, I don't know what it is or isn't, but as he indicated, there's a spectrum of life, and it makes sense, right? It's the size of the universe, the consistency of its chemical makeup. Human beings being carbon-based, it's makes carbon is ubiquitous throughout the universe. I mean, it just makes sense that there's going to be similarities in life, but it also makes sense that there'll be some diversity. So, I think it's reasonable to conclude that there would be different forms of life, and some of it's going to appear quite strange to us.
Well, folks, what do you think? 1-800-848-9222. I mean, you hear a lot about this, not only here on this station, powerful as it is, around the world, but in the regular television world. You're constantly seeing these interviews But again, I want to be a believer of this, but I don't want to be negative here, but I want to be honest. Not one credible shred of evidence is brought to the table. Look at Roswell. There was allegedly something with a piece of aluminum type skin from one of the craft that was recovered, I imagine. I believe that it was. The item was rolled up in your hand, and it comes back to perfect symmetry as if it never was folded. Where's that? Where's something? Give us something that gives us credibility on this. But here, another weird question that brings to my mind, this is common sense. Why is he, David Grush, still walking and not in a pine box, okay? And why are some of these other people disappeared? Their disappearance is very strange. General McCaslin, right?
Yes.
Recent revelations on him to tell the audience to update them. They now have law enforcement video of the general, okay, just at the time he was leaving his home, just around that time period, where he's shopping at a sporting goods store and he's got a few things in his hand. He goes home, and this is not, 100% literal here. This is like reading this, and I'm not reading this right now to the audience. He goes out, he leaves his possessions there. He doesn't take a driver's license or anything, I guess. He just takes off into the woods with a .38 special pistol, and he just goes out into the wilderness. He's never been found. And then Maria Casillas, who was also a researcher at Los Alamos, or an administrative clerk, I think that's a better term, she's found dead in the desert, in the woods of New Mexico, sitting there as a skeleton, and there's a handgun or something right next to her body. What's up with all this? This is insanity. What's going on here?
Yeah, it is insanity. And, there's a long history of people in ufology meeting a strange demise. And I think that tradition, it continues. But why some are allowed to talk and proceed and versus others that aren't, I don't know. I can't answer that.
Of course not.
I'm thinking the whole time I'm watching David Grush, that I'm like you, wow, I can't believe you're getting away with this, because, it's very, he is spilling the tea. I mean, it's almost like he has non-disclosure agreement, because what else can he say? So
it's powerful stuff, and it almost seems insulting to people of intelligence. I mean, common sense, it seems insulting. You're telling us all these things, and for instance, let's go deeper into this, and the audience, I'm sure, wants to hear this, or they would like to chime in on that. They know how to reach us. But here's the interesting thing. When he was testifying, David Grush, in front of Congress in 2023, many of the congresswomen, congressmen, are asking questions. And one of the questions that I believe Representative Luna asked him, David Grush, does the United States government have possession of these alien craft and the biologics, the bodies? And he said yes. And she pursued, the question further. Well, where are they? You have to go into a skiff to talk about this, the secret area where they take your phone. They lock you down, and it's nothing's going to get out of that skiff, I guess, unless they want it to. And so somebody knows about this, and David Grush is saying it exists. So when are we ever going to find out? Well, what's the big deal here? I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's the burn, right? That's the frustration that we all have, is that there are plenty of claims about this, but there's no proof given. And I think the logical answer to that is because the gatekeepers aren't letting it go, and they're hiding behind the issue of national security and top security clearances and that kind of thing. But as David himself has said, and many others, congressmen and congresswomen have said, is that they're overclassifying everything, and just to keep everything out of the public knowledge. And
sure.
And so that's the frustration, and that's why there's a need for disclosure, right? The government is not being transparent with what it knows, in spite of the calls to do so. And so it's this relentless pressure from the general public and from the media, and now, thank goodness, whistleblowers, first-hand accounts, and congressmen and women are all keeping the pressure up to get this stuff disclosed, and
totally amazing.
It's clearly having an effect, right?
Oh, I know, you're right, and it's interesting.
You would never hear.
But Shane, I want to move on to something that people tell me they enjoy from this particular radio show, other than obviously our great guests. In addition to our great guests, we do the sky update for everybody out there. So if I've been remiss in not giving you what's in the heavens, I think Shane would agree. To be a better observer of the heavens gives you the ability to say, we know this object from another object that you might have thought was simply a UAP. So let's go into the skies for this part of the month of June. As we approach to the mid-period, this is fascinating. One of the most beautiful conjunctions of planets, the planet Venus and the planet Jupiter, still continue in the northwest sky. I don't know if you've been able to see it, but everywhere that this radio station is heard, and that's globally, in your evening, if you look specifically in the northern hemisphere I'm talking about, to the northwest, what makes that so spectacular? Because one of the things that gets often reported, and you know this, the planet Venus, which is the brighter of the two objects that you're seeing there in the sky, it is often reported as the biggest, the biggest UFO object or UAP of all time, because when it gets lower to the horizon, its light starts to quiver because of the atmospheric distortion. So how many police stations and news and television stations, radio stations have been inundated with phone calls? So that's what you're seeing. But moving deeper into the sky this month, this is fascinating to me, and I hope to the listeners. The moon moves on to its new phase on the 15th. What is that? It means it's the dark of the moon, as they call it in astronomy. No moon in the sky. So if you have clear skies and you live in areas, and let me say this, folks, even if you live in brightly lit cities, you can still participate in the beautiful conjunction in the northwest. But for everybody who's far and wide and away from the lights of the city, it's the best time to observe the heavens. Why? Because no moonlight. So if you look to the southern part of the sky around 10 p.m., you'll see the majesty of the Milky Way, the core of our galaxy, which is so beautiful if you're taking a vacation, or if you happen to drive away from city lights. The big complex, the Milky Way, 27,000 light years to the core. That's just some amazing things that are going on. And we want to report to everybody that in August, one of SpaceX rocket boosters is going to be intentionally blasted and crashed into the moon. And that's taking a lot of interest by people with small telescopes, maybe even binoculars. You may not see the explosion, but you could see on the edge of the moon. It'll be literally on the edge of the moon. We'll keep you updated here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Lots of interesting things here, Shane, but more important than anything I've said, what could be more important than that, is the callers to the show. The Theater of the Mind, 1-800-848-9222. Your questions and comments are much appreciated, folks, on these particular subjects. If you have seen the movie, we'd love to hear from you. If you haven't and have general questions, that's why we're here, to talk about these things. And Shane, we got about a minute. Just give us your website or some way that people can get in touch with you or MUFON in general.
Yep. You can reach me at Shane, S-H-A-N-E, at phoenixmufon.com. And that would be the best way to get a hold of me. I also have a website, shaneherd.com. You can ping me there as well. And I'm out there on Facebook as well. So
we thank you. And that's Shane, S-H-A-N-E, Herd, H-U-R-D.com. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, on the Dr. Sky Experience. Still time for you to light up the fires as we continue to talk and probe the mysteries of the universe. And we're hoping that's our goal, that everybody learns something new each time they check in with our special guest. We'll be right back.
This is the Dr. Sky Experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
This is Captain Jim Lovell, an old astronaut that's made 4 very significant flights. Hopefully that the people listen in, especially the young people, will get a good education, kind of follow me in space. And it was a pleasure to be on the Dr. Sky show, and lots of luck to all of you.
I'm sure the universe is full of intelligent life. It's just been too intelligent to come here. Another quote from the great sci-fi writer and man who gave us the whole idea behind geosynchronous satellites, Arthur C. Clarke. 47 minutes after the hour, as we move into our time machine, the next iteration of the Dr. Sky Experience, less than 24 hours away, we join a special individual, Dr. Rainer Zedelman, as we call him in Germany, a gentleman who's written a phenomenal book here that I'm sure everybody within the sound of my voice will appreciate. A book entitled New Space Capitalism, The Entrepreneurial Path to the Stars. And by the way, Dr. Zedelman writes so extensively on the plus side of capitalism, a man who knows a lot about business, and we'll welcome him to the Dr. Sky Experience. Right now, we continue to welcome Shane Hurd. He, of course, a MUFON investigator on the whole science of ufology. So many things to talk about here in so limited time. Here's one that I want to throw out to you in the audience. We're hearing about something. I watched one of the press conferences, and I happened to catch these words and didn't even know what they were talking about. One of the media correspondents asked Mr. Grush, can you describe and talk about the project called Immaculate Constellation? Have you heard about that one, Shane? This is amazing. A project called Immaculate Constellation. What can you help us on with that?
I heard David Grush refer to that, and frankly, I am not sure what that all entails. Obviously, crash retrieval, back engineering, that kind of a thing. And, part of the special access programs that, are thought to represent that legacy UFO program. And so that's come to light and is being talked about by Grush, and I think by some others. Lou Elizondo and them are referring to it. So, yeah, it's probably the basis for, a lot of what we're talking about.
And let's talk a little bit about Lou Elizondo, as he calls himself. Lou, obviously, in the mainstream media, he's an interesting guy. I mean, I've read his book. Obviously, we've tried many times to get him, the book called Imminent. I recommend that highly. I'm sure you would to the listeners out there, because he goes into so many deep parts of this. But let's concentrate on something here for the few moments we have with you. That maybe if you look at the astronomical side of this, if you look at the distances that are in the universe, and this limited speed thing called the speed of light, where some people say nothing can go faster, let's say that premise is true from Einstein. Look how long it would take these, quote, individuals, beings, entities to get here. Let's go on to the whole thing that these are dimensional type of beings of some sort. That to me is even more bizarre, because we really don't even understand what consciousness is, and we really don't have a totally good understanding of what time really is. Your take on that to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of this, I mean, what it just tells me is, we don't know what we don't know. And that's where all of this stuff lives. And that's why it's so hard to get our heads around it. And so I agree, obviously, if it's true, we are being visited by another intelligence, the notion that they got in a craft and flew from another galaxy or wherever to here does not make sense from our perspective and our knowledge of physics, right? So we have to hold out the possibility that there's something we don't know that they know that makes it possible. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is the whole interdimensional thing, which many people are supportive of that. I think there's some merit to that myself, but we don't know, right? We've never been to the fifth dimension. We it's theoretical. So,
but I like their music in the '60s, though. There you go.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're very good. So it's fun to talk about and to imagine, and I think it's good and healthy for us to do it. It exercises our brains, our minds. It gets people communicating with each other in a non-political way or a non-threatening way, or it's good-natured. It's the human mind. We're explorers. We're knowledge seekers, and that's why it stays alive, and it's a source of our attention now, and I think that's all good. But as we discussed earlier, I think we are getting to the point, we being the public, humanity, to the point where we need more than that now. We're beyond the basics and the ABCs. Now we're trying to get to some real fact and some core knowledge, and we're just going to have better evidence presented by somebody that we all trust in a way that we all understand, and that whole thing. So it's not just about disclosure, because in my opinion, disclosure's already happened. We all know the government knows more than they have said, and they have admitted that.
Tell us. Give us something. Right. Give us something solid
that's right.
to go on here, so that people who listen to shows like this do not hear the same, regurgitation of information with nothing else to show for it. It's like a magician. I want to learn the trick, even though you'll probably never tell me how the trick is done. Well, that's the whole purpose of not telling you how the trick works. It's a trick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But here's something interesting for people, Shane, that I want to pass on to the audience. If you're really a diehard in this and you'd like to learn so much more about these government documents and things that are actually published so you become a much better individual knowledge-wise, go to this website, governmentattic.org. I don't know if you've ever heard it. It has a Latin phrase attached to it called videre licet. And though I'm not an expert in Latin, when I was an altar boy, I had, of course, practiced that in the 60s and 70s, but not anymore. So videre licet, it means it's permitted to see. So what is in this particular website? It's a government attic that you can see so many of these documents that have been published through Freedom of Information. And that's interesting because for anybody out there that wants to learn so much more about the subject, I don't know if you've seen that website. I just brought it to everybody's attention because it is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, if you want to talk about disclosure and if you value government documentation as a source of truth and fact, there are millions of pages of documents related to the UFO issue from all agencies, the CIA, the FBI, the DOD, the whole thing. And in my opinion, that already is disclosure. These are bona fide government documents that talk about the subject. So, but like I said, proof is subjective. And, we are going to have something very tangible and solid to move forward. And like these last 3 tranches of documents and videos released, while I am grateful and there is information to be gleaned from them, they still are very underwhelming when it comes to what people really need now. We're all well educated on lights in the sky and thermal videos, like you mentioned, of a little blip flying over the ocean. Okay, all interesting, good, and valuable, but we're past that, right? We're not in kindergarten anymore. We're ready to move on and do some real math. So that's my frustration. Like I said, I'm grateful that this level of transparency is occurring, and I think it's helpful and valuable, but it's not enough. And I don't know how they stop without having, an extremely negative reaction. It feels like the snowball is rolling and gaining size. So, and I hope that's true. And like I said before, they don't have to give us the whole story yet. They can parse it out. They can drip feed us like they have been, but what they need to do now is more than they're doing. And that's just my perspective.
Well, you've said it well, and I appreciate you as a guest and all the folks at MUFON for, spending time with us, other people with great interest in this very subject, just like Steven Spielberg's earlier iteration, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, bringing now the latest, Disclosure Day, a movie that you might want to see, ladies and gentlemen, just to understand what's really going on from the great Steven Spielberg and how he's put this whole thing out there as what? We need information. His primary facie part of the movie talks about the cover-up, and we all know that. So we need to learn so much more about this, keeping our minds open and keeping our eyes to the skies. Because, again, I can't repeat it enough, to learn the map of the sky, and I'm sure you would agree, Shane Hurd, that the more you know about what's there, the constellations, the star names, the things that are up there, that helps you. You don't have to be a navigator, like you're flying an aircraft or spacecraft, so that when you do report something, it has a little bit more credibility so people like yourself can do a deeper dive into something and not just dismiss it as the planet Venus, but not everybody wants to go that way. That's their choice. I do appreciate you, and you got 30 seconds, so let's take advantage of that from your side. What would you like to tell this audience on the Dr. Sky Experience?
Well, I would just like to say that, be curious, look up in the sky, and, I recommend seeing this movie. It touches on accurately on many of the themes in ufology now. And just be curious and seek to learn and know. And it's so fulfilling and satisfying and enriching, and you know, put a little effort into it, you know, and you will gain so much. So that would be it. I would say keep your eyes on the skies and keep your mind open.
Shane Hurd, thank you so much. Appreciate you and all the people who are out there that are listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. Write that number down, 1-800-848-9222. And while you're at it, I say it proudly, why not download the WABC app? Because we like to call this show a theater of the mind. Why? Because you can't see the activity unless we're doing this on television. And who knows, maybe that expands here in the future of technology. But for now, privilege and honor to be sitting behind this microphone. And a big thank you to owner and operator John Katzimatidis. And from the executive staff, Chad Lopez, for giving me an opportunity of a lifetime. I listened to the station when I was a child living in Queens, New York. And one day, look what's happened. And it's with gratitude that I do appreciate the opportunity. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, as we pass this torch and this microphone over in dialogue. 2 and 4, Another Side of Midnight, as Lionel takes you, ladies and gentlemen, from 2 a.m. right into the time of sunrise, the earliest sunrises of the year, as summer solstice is just around the corner. And again, our helmsmen, thank you, both to Bill and Jackson, for doing what they do, a very important part of this show. Thank you, good health, and we'll see you in less than 24 hours.
On the biggest stage in the world, FanDuel is changing the game because sometimes your player gets subbed off and your bet goes with them. Not anymore. With FanDuel Super Sub, if your player's subbed out, your bet stays in. That's right. If your player leaves the match, your bet continues on with the substitute. So you're still in it until the final whistle. Visit FanDuel.com. Get started now. Let there be goals this summer on FanDuel.
21 plus select states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. 18 plus DCKYWY. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 1-800-MY-RESET. 888-789-7777. Visit ccpg.org/chat. Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org. Maryland. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. Call 800-327-5050. Massachusetts. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Text HOPE-NY in New York. Call 877-770-7867. Louisiana.
Visit FanDuel.com. Get started now. Let there be goals this summer on FanDuel.